Hi, everyone. Start the session.
Yeah, hi.
So is my voice clear?
It's clear.
We'll share the screen and then we'll start the session. Okay, fine. So let us start the session. So in the previous session, in the first class, so this is the second class. So in the first session, so what we have seen is like basics of data engineering. So we started with why big data systems, and then so what are the value added features we have it in analytics and then big data systems. So by implementing big data systems, how in organizations they can do analytics, they can do machine learning. So we have seen all the introduction, and then we saw what is database, what is data warehouse, data marts, data lake, and we saw that we are getting into data lake. So the first step we are going to do is get detail into data lake, because in organizations, data lake is heavily used. As a data engineer, we are the person who is responsible for working on the data lake, maintaining data lake, creating buckets, storing data. So first thing is we are going to get into data lake, and we are going to store data, process data. We are going to handle different format of data on the data lake. That is the first thing we are going to start. So this is what we discussed in the previous session. And today what we are going to start is, so we are going to start on the core services. So we are going to start on IAM and S3. Okay, so far we did not do any hands-on. So we have seen in the first class only theoretically. So what is data engineering, and then how data engineering helps organization, that is what we discussed. Today we are going to see hands-on. That means we are going to get into IAM, we are going to get into S3. So we are going to touch on the few of the core areas. Okay, so let us go into the sections. So I think you, if you have created your AWS account, the trial account, you should see the console. Okay, so this is the AWS console. So I have, so if you have not created, try to create it by today or tomorrow. So in AWS account, in your console, you can search for any of the services. So for example, you can see, I can search for step functions, and I can add it to favorite. So if I click on this, I can add it to favorite. You can see it will be added here. If I want to remove it, for example, I want to remove lambda here. So I can remove lambda. Okay, this is how we can add it to favorite or remove it to favorite. For now, I'm making it simpler. I'm removing all the advanced functions. I'll remove step functions also. I'll have only the core services. So we have IAM, S3, EC2, RDS, VPC. These are the things which we are going to discuss in the next few sessions. Okay, so initially for the first few classes, we are going to touch upon on this area, on the core services. Okay, so here, if you see my AWS account, so this month, right, we are starting this batch and only like 5 days over. So it is like, you can see the current month charges is 0. even though I am not using free tier. So I'm using free tier, but I'll be charged for S3. I'll be charged because I am using it maximum out of my free tier. Okay, and if you see here, in your free tier account, the first thing you have to do is enable few things. Okay, so first thing is go to your security credentials and enable multi-factor authentication. So if you see here, multi-factor authentication. So you can assign MFA where you can assign your
చెప్పు రైట్
if you're not talking, if you don't have questions, you can go on mute.
అదే ఎలా చేద్దాం
So if you see here, in MFA, you can assign authenticator app. It can be mobile app, it can be a hardware token. So we'll always assign authenticator app as a mobile app. So you can install. So I'm just giving a name, device name. You can install Google Authenticator on your mobile and configure it. You can scan this QR code. So whenever you log in, right, along with your username password, you can use the MFA also. It's a multi-factor authentication which helps you to secure your account so that if you are using a simple password, your account can be hacked. To avoid that, you can add your multi-factor authentication so to secure your account so that you will not have cost added to your cloud account. Okay, so that is the first thing, adding MFA. The next thing is, so how to see cost utilization? So this topic I'm going to discuss multiple times initially because few of you are new to AWS and we don't want to see a lot of cost being added to your cloud. For that, how you can see it is go to your cost management, billing and cost management, and you can monitor your billing. So you can go to Cost Explorer or you can go here, search for Cost Explorer. Directly you can go for Cost Explorer and you can see your billing month wise or day wise or week wise. So I can see past one day what was my utilization. So you can see in past one day my utilization is 0 because we did not have batches for the last 5 days. Before that we had a batch. So you can see for the past 5 days my billing is 0. So like this you can monitor your cloud account weekly once or daily. Why it is a good habit to do it? Because sometimes you are creating some service, AWS services like RDS or DynamoDB. So mainly RDS, right? So in the previous classes, we had persons creating RDS and they are not deleting the RDS instance because RDS, if you create instance, for example, if you go here, click on MySQL, create production instance, this will be chargeable. Okay, so if you're creating a production instance and if you're not creating a free tier, if you create a free tier instance, which is a simple one, they will not charge you. But if you create a production instance, it will be charged and it will be charged daily. So to avoid that, at least after 1 or 2 days, you can capture it in the cost explorer. If you have monitored the cost of your cloud account, you can easily avoid the cost. Okay, so that's the best practice. You always can do it 2 days once or 3 days once. Go to Cost Explorer, monitor your cloud account, see the usages. So, and if you see that there is some cost being added, your utilization is overvalued, then you can inform me. I will help you for reducing the cost. So here you can see always when you are using free tier, it should be built under free tier. So if you see here, there is free tier. So always it should be using free tier. If it is not using free tier and you are charged for other usages, then you should delete the resources. Okay, so you should try to delete it. If you are not able to delete it, you can tell me, I will help you delete it. Okay. So why I'm showing this now? Because if you see now, my account is 0. That means I have not utilized for this month. I have not utilized. Everything is 0 now. So slowly I'll be using a lot of services. So we can see the charges here, how the billing is done, how the for each services, how billing is done, which services the billing is higher, everything you can monitor. That is why we are seeing it now in the initial session. So, and what happened is like it takes 24 hours to reflect. That means you are doing something, you are creating a service, you are using some service here, it will reflect only next day. That means you are using some services today, RDS or something, it will reflect only next day. Okay, so you can verify it. For example, I started RDS and it is running throughout the day. I'll be billed for throughout the day. If I'm not stopping next day, I'll be billed for next day. But by using Cost Explorer, you can identify that and stop it in the next day so that you will be billed for only one day. It may be $1 or less than that. Okay, if you are not stopping. Or if you are using free tier, right, you will not be charged. So that is why you have to use free tier. So I'll tell you how to use free tier services, how to use efficiently, I'll tell you. So there is a question here. Since this is the first time, it will take some time to prepare your cost and usage data. Please check back in 24 hours. So this is not my first account. So I have been using this account for last few months. Okay, this is not, this is, I have multiple free tier accounts. This is one of my free tier account. Okay, and for this month, it's zero here. I'm not using it for the last 5 days, so it is zero. Okay, previous month bills are generated. If you see the Cost Explorer, so if you see for the last month, there are some bills generated, and the bills you can see by services in the last month. If you see which services I have paid, so I have paid for Kinesis, Elastic MapReduce, EMR, Glue. So you can see all these services are costed. Okay, so like other this all are free service, free tier services. So DynamoDB, Lambda, Kinesis, S3, all are step functions. The charging is zero because we have used free tier, and only this services we have used compute, so it's charge form. This is for the last month utilization. Okay, so this is on the Cost Explorer and then billing. So we will discuss on this later. Again, after a few sessions, we will discuss on this. We will see how the charging is done and how the utilization is done. All this thing we'll discuss again. Okay, now let us move on to IAM. Okay, so what is IAM? So IAM is identity and access management. Okay, so in any applications, right? So if you take any web applications, we have users, right? So first thing is user. So you log in as a user. There can be groups, there can be roles. So similar to that, in AWS, in IAM, we manage user accounts. So you can see can create users and we can assign permission to the users. So in organizations, there can be multiple AWS account and you will be assigned to some AWS account. It can be dev account, it can be stage account or production account. Based on the role you play, you may be assigned to different accounts. So, and there you will be given a user access and you will be given permissions. So you may be given read permission or write permission based on the services you use. Okay. So user roles, policies. So the access management is the place where your users account are created, your permission to the services are given, everything is managed here. Okay, so that is what IAM is. So you can see here IAM is a security service which helps you manage your AWS resources. So we give permissions for users so that they can access S3, they can access EC2, RDS, different services, they can access it. So the permissions we give, read permission, write permission, or delete permission, we give it. For example, I give in S3, I have S3 bucket. In S3 bucket, for a user, I give only read access. So he can perform only read activity. Or I give read and write full access I give. So he can delete the data, he can read the data, he can do all the activity. Like that, for users, we give the permissions. So in organizations, you have different permissions. So based on the like a role, your permissions given. Okay, then next thing is you have authentication mechanism. It can be multi-factor authentication or single sign-on. In organization, we use single sign-on. In our account, we have used multi-factor authentication. We use password and then the OTP tokens for logging into the AWS account. Okay, so like using IAM, users can access any of the service. Okay, they can access like services like Lambda, S3, EC2, Glue, any of the AWS services, right? You need to have permissions. So first thing is you will create a user, and for that user, if they have permission, then only they can access it. Okay, so we are going to discuss this in detail, how it works for different applications, everything we'll discuss. So let me show another one. So here you can see in organizations, they have multiple environments. They have dev, QA, stage, prod, multiple accounts. In AWS itself, they have multiple accounts. So you may have access to dev. You are a developer or a data engineer. You may have access to dev and QA. You may not have access to stage and prod, because stage and prod are accessed by customers. So you may not have access. So your user profile, your user account will have only read access to stage and prod, or you may not have access also. But in dev, you may have write access. I can write it to a bucket. I can delete the data in dev. That is how your accounts will be. Okay. So now let us go and we'll create a user. So I'm going to create a new user. So this is one I created for morning batch. I'll create newly. I'll create dev2 user May 2025. That is the user I'm creating it. So I'm not assigning to any group. I'm not assigning to groups. So why groups? So the permission, you can give it for the group. So it will apply to the users assigned to the group. So for example, if I give permission, so if you see here, for this user group, the user group name is business user. For the business user group, we have given permission to access Athena QuickSet. Okay, so if I assign this user to analyst group, then automatically he will have access to Athena and then QuickSet. Okay, that is the purpose of group. So that I don't have to give individual user access. So I can give it group wise, so the access will be easier. Or you can give individual wise access also. So you can go to attach policy and you can select the policy. For example, we are selecting S3 and I can give full access or read only access like that. I can give permission group wise or individual wise also. Okay, that is how you set the permission. For now, I'm not going to give any permission. I'm just creating the user. So I created a user. You can see dev user is the one which we created. Okay, so we created user. So using this user, I can access the application outside of AWS. Okay, so that means using this user account, I can access AWS services outside of AWS. That means from my Windows machines or from Linux machines or any environment, you can install AWS CLI. Okay, so AWS CLI is a client tool, it's a command line utility tool. So you can install that in your local machine. So in the previous session, if you see, I gave this document where I asked you guys to install all these tools, right? Like Visual Studio Code, AWS CLI. So you just have to download it and install it on local. So if you have not done it, you can do it today. So you can install Visual Studio Code, you can install AWS CLI, and then you can install Python on your local Windows machine and Docker desktop on your local machine. So this all and DBViewer is a client tool to verify your database connection. So you have to install all these tools on your local machine. So this is the first thing you have to do. So I already have shared this document. You can go to the course, for example. So if you have access to the course, right, you can see this document is uploaded. So you can download it and use it. Okay, so I have already installed Visual Studio Code. I have also already installed Python, and we have Docker desktop in our in my local environment. So I'm going to open my Visual Studio. Okay, so I'm opening my Visual Studio, and then what I'm going to do. So for the morning batch, I uploaded a package. So I'll go to the morning batch. So I'll show it. So I uploaded a zip file. You can see zip file. The same zip file, I'm going to upload it today for the evening batch. Okay, so at the end of the session, I'm going to upload the zip file. So let me open that zip file. So I'll show it what it is there. Okay, this is the zip file. So it's so in the zip file, you can see this is what it is there. So where we have some workspace, Docker file and notes. Okay, this is the zip file I've uploaded. So again, for you guys, I'm going to upload. So I'm going to unzip that. So I'm unzipping the zip file, and you can see I'm deleting the folders. So you can see this is what we have. So I created a new folder here, evening batch. In the new folder, I have this files. I have Jupyter Workspace, Docker file, and notes. So this folder, I'm going to open it in my Visual Studio Code. I'll go to Visual Studio, open folder. So why Visual Studio Code? It's an editor. It's nothing but a editor where you can edit the files and then you can see the code. If it is a Python code, you can easily understand the code, or it has autocomplete option. It provides you syntax. So it's a IDE for developing your code. So that is why Visual Studio Code. And here terminal, you can go to terminal. So you can see we have, as I said, we have some Docker file. I'll explain what is Docker, everything later. And we have notes. So here you can see the notes. We are going to do this step. We are going to follow this step and then set up our local environment. So I'll be sharing all the files. I'll be sharing all the zip files today. So PDF and everything. So if you see here, I'll first check if AWS CLI is installed. I'll give AWS -" version. So you can see AWS CLI is installed already. So using the exe, I have installed it. Okay, so if you follow this installation steps, you can install AWS CLI. It's getting the exe and installing it on local. And you have to install Visual Studio Code, and you have to install Python and Docker Desktop. Okay, let me check if Docker Desktop is installed. So Docker PS. So that will give you. So it says that Docker is not running. So I'll go here. I'll say Docker Desktop. So we don't have anything. We don't have Docker. We don't see any containers here. That means Docker is empty. So we don't have anything running on Docker containers. So we have seen now AWS CLI is running and Docker is running. Okay, now let us check if Python is there. So Python is there. And other than that, we have checked Visual Studio, AWS CLI, Python, Docker, we have checked, and dbviewer. So we'll come to dbviewer later. So first step is, if you see this notes here, first step what we are doing, we need access keys. Why access keys? Because from Windows Machine, I'm going to access my cloud account. So cloud account is there in the public environment, right? So, and you have a users there. So that user, you are going to use that user account and create AWS services. So you need the username and password, right? That is why we need the access keys and the secret keys here. So we'll go to the user account which we created. So this is the account which we created. I'll go to security credentials and I'll go to access keys. You can see here access keys. So what is this access key? So you can see here access keys sends programmatic calls to call AWS from AWS CLI. Okay, so from AWS CLI, you can use these access keys and create your AWS services. It can be like S3 buckets or EC2 or creating any AWS service, right? You can use this access key. So I'll go here, create access key, and I'll say that application is running outside of AWS because we are running from Windows. So that is outside of AWS. So I'll say it's running outside of AWS, and I'll give next, create access key. So we have generated access key and then secret. So I've copied both, and then I'll copy that, download the CSV file, and done. So what we did, we created user. So this is the user which we created, and we created access keys. We created access key. This access key, if you don't want, you can deactivate it, delete it, and then create new ones. If you feel that you are shared with other users and you don't want to activate it, you want to inactivate it, you can inactivate it. Or if you want to delete it and recreate it again. Okay. So access keys are nothing but credentials. It's a credentials for this user. For this user, you are creating a credentials, access keys. So we created access key. Now I'll go, what I'll do, I'll configure it here, and then we will use it. So before doing that, what I will do, so in my account, I already have access keys. So already I have access keys. I'm going to delete it. So I'll go to my local, see users, AWS, credentials. So this is where your AWS credential will be saved. So I'm going to delete it. So I'll go here and delete my old access keys. So delete it. Now let me check first if AWS commands are working. So I'm going to give AWS S3 LS. So I'm giving a CLI command. So you can see it says that if I give this command, it says that first configure your credentials. Okay. I'll open command prompt. We will do the same thing in the command prompt. So it's a command line CLI. It will work on command prompt or in your Visual Studio terminal. Both it will work. So I'll give AWS S3 LS. So it says that you need to configure your account. So I'll go and configure first. I'm going to configure it. So you can see here it's asking for key ID. The key ID is the first one. I'll copy and paste it. And then I'll copy the secret access keys. So I need to give region. So I'll go to my AWS account. You can see, like for example, I am using for my AWS services, I use a particular region. So I use Asia specific. I use Mumbai, AP South. Okay, so if you are nearest to whatever region, you can select the particular region. Always try to use one region. Don't use multiple regions, because if you create multiple regions, you may miss to delete it. That service will be running and then you will be built. That is why avoid using multiple regions. Always try to create your services on one region. So always use one region. So I'm going to use AWS South for all my services creations and then automation, everything. So I'm going to use my AWS South. So I'm copying this and pasting it here. And default output format, you can give none. Okay, so far we have configured. So we have configured our default account. So I'll go to my local. You can see default is configured. Now I'll try the command. I'll do AWS S3 LS. So what it says, you can see different error now. Before the error was configure your account. Now the error says this user which I created does not have permission to list my bucket. So this command is to list the bucket. So I'm listing all the buckets in my data lake. So I have buckets in my data lake. So I'll go to S3. You can see these are my buckets, right? I'm trying to list my all the buckets using CLI. So that it is not able to perform because this user, the user which I created, doesn't have any permission. So I'll go here. I'll add permission. So I'm going to add permission attach policy. I'm going to give S3 full access. So we give S3 full access. Now let me try the same command. So you can see now we got permission to all the buckets. So I'm able to list all my buckets. Okay, so this is on the command line. Let me go to my Visual Studio, and then there we will do the same AWS S3 LS. Okay, so we were able to list the files. So using AWS CLI, we were able to list the buckets. Okay, so if you want to see what are the commands are there, part of AWS CLI, you can go to documents. So AWS CLI. So you can see this document where you can refer user guide or command examples. This is the one way of doing it. The other way is you can use ChatGPT. So I'll say for now S3 commands. Okay, because each services has their own CLI commands. For now, I'm making it very simple. AWS CLI S3 commands. So you can see here what are the basic commands for listing all the buckets, listing content of a bucket, upload a file, download, delete. So you get all the basic operations, right? Basic download, upload, basic operations, the command you're getting it. Okay. So far what we have done, we have created a user using IAM, we have created a user, and for that user, we gave S3 access, and for that user, we gave CLI access keys. That means we created the access keys, and using that access key from our local, we were able to access our AWS S3. That means our profile is configured, our AWS CLI account is configured, so I'm able to run some S3 commands. Okay. So now let us go to the next step. Okay. So so far we have used IAM. So we were creating a user account. So you can see there are roles, there are policies. So what is roles? What is policy? So we have seen what is user group. User group is nothing but instead of giving individual user permission, I can create a group and give permission for the entire group so that I don't have to give each user wise permissions. What is roles? So when you are working on applications, for example, when you are working on Glue or when you are working on Lambda, you may be running on the console, you may be running the applications. While running the application, that application need permission. So if you see here, I'm running some Glue jobs. So let me change it to AP South. So I'm running a ETL job. To run this job, I need a permission. So you can see I have a role. So this role is assigned to this ETL job and that role has permissions. So from this ETL, I'm going to access S3. I may be accessing RDS, different AWS service, right? So you need to give permission to this role. Because you are using this role, you are assigning to this application this role. This role should have the permission. So if I go to the roles and search for Glue, dev role, you can see the permissions here. So I've given permission for Glue, I've given permission for RDS, DynamoDB, CloudWatch. So I've given different permission for that role. That is why you are able to execute the job and run the application, connect to S3, connect to RDS, you are able to do it. Okay. So if you are using applications, running application within AWS, you need to have role. If you have users, using user, you can from external environment, you can connect to AWS and access your services. So we are going to use both. We are going to use role also. We are going to use users also. Okay, and policies, there are predefined policies. That means there are permission which is already created. Okay, for now, if you see, we use S3 full access, right? So you can see the permission S3 full access. So using this, you have full permission to S3. Like that, you have already predefined permissions. That is what we call it as policy. So you can attach the policy to users or role. Okay, this is what IAM is about. So any questions on IAM? Okay, fine. So like we are going to use IAM for providing access, to users or providing access to services. So we are going to create roles, we are going to create policies from whenever we use any services, right? Access management is an important one because if you don't have permission, you cannot do any activity. So we'll be using IAM very frequently for different kind of access management. Okay, now let us go into our local environment, and then we will configure our local setup. So we are going to configure our local environment. So what we need in local? So we have set it already AWS CLI. Okay, and now what we are going to do is we are going to set up our Docker container. So why Docker? What is the purpose of Docker here? So like Docker, it's going to help us for quicker installation. Okay, so I want to install something on Windows machine or Linux machine or Mac without doing much configurations. I can take the image and quickly install it. So it helps you to install something quickly. Okay, it's nothing but it's a virtual OS pre-built software. Okay, so I can go to Docker registry. So I'll go to Docker registry. We call it as Docker registry or Docker hub, and then we can search for the image and then pull that image and run it on your local. So you can see I'll search for AWS Glue. So there is already an image there. So if you see this image, it's a latest image which is provided by AWS for testing your Glue, running your Spark on your local environment. Okay, so this is the image which we are going to use it. We are going to download and use it on our local. So why this image? Because we are going to try Glue on our local environment. Because Glue, you can run it on cloud, but you will be charged for the usage. Whenever I run any job here on the cloud, I'll be charged. To avoid the cloud charges, AWS has given this Docker container. So you can install it on local using Docker desktop and use it on your local. That is what we are going to use it. So for that, we are setting up Docker desktop. Using Docker desktop, I can install any containers. So here, let us first start with simple container. What I'm going to do is, before starting Glue container, I will go and set up MySQL container so that we will understand Docker better. Then we'll go for Glue container. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start MySQL with simple line of command. So I'm going to use only this command and I'll make it very simple. So I'll modify it. I'll make this password. I'll make this password simple. And what we have, so we have, I'll remove this mounting of volume. So if you see, this is the command. Here in this command, what we have, we are calling MySQL image. So this is the MySQL image, and this is the name of the image. So I'll name it this thing anything. So I'll say MySQL demo 1. This is the name I'm giving to the Docker container, and this is the actual image. So if you go to Docker Hub, search for MySQL. So you can see there is a MySQL image. Like that, you have images for all the database. If you want SQL Server, you want to install it locally, you can go and search for SQL Server. Or if you want a database like MongoDB, so you can search for MongoDB. Like that, Docker Hub has lot of images. So it helps you to quickly run the software without configuration. That is the purpose. And here we are going to use Docker only for setting up environment. So you don't have to get deeper into Docker. You don't need to get deeper into Docker environments. So we want to set up the local Glue environment. For that, we are using Docker. Otherwise, we don't need to get into Docker deeper because we are not working on DevOps, right? Normally, Docker containers are used by DevOps for building container framework or building orchestration with containers. But we are not going into that. We are setting up our local environment. That for that we need Glue Docker container. That is what we are setting up. So I'll go to my local. I'll give this command just like Docker run MySQL. So I gave this command. You can see I'll go to Docker. You can see MySQL started. Okay, so if you click on this, you can see the logs. So it says it's initializing the MySQL. and started the MySQL. Okay, I want to connect and see if I can access the database, if I want to access create tables, can I if I can access that, let us go to DBviewer. So I already installed DBviewer in my local. So DBviewer is a client tool. Using that, you can connect to multiple databases. It can be MySQL, SQL Server. So it has support to multiple databases. So if you see here, I will show that. So for installation of DBviewer, you can see this document where we have given the URL and how to install it, the setups are here. So if you see in DBviewer, so it supports multiple databases. You can connect to MySQL, SQL Server, Postgres, and Cassandra, like that. It supports multiple versions of database. It's nothing but a client tool where you can connect to the server and then see the database, see the table, you can write SQLs here, write DDL commands, DML commands here in the tool here. Okay, so now I'll edit. So already have created the connection. I'll change the password. So you can see this is the local host and we are using port 3306 for our MySQL. So you can see this is our password and port is 3306. You can see the port is 3306 and root and password and testing the password and testing the connection. So you can see I'm connected to MySQL. I'll go and then check if database is there. So you can see database is there and I'll create a new database. So like I've created the new database. So now I'll create a simple table and we'll insert data. I'll use SQL editor. I created a table. So no database selected. I have to select the database. So we have created a table. I'll insert some data. Okay. So we have inserted some data. Let us go and verify. I'll refresh it and verify the table data. So you can see the data. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll go to my Docker container. So you can see the Docker container. I'll stop it. I'm going to stop it and I'm going to delete it. Okay. So if I delete it and then start it again, my data will be lost. Why? Because I have not mounted my data. I've not stored the data into my local. Okay, so we have run this. So if you are not mounting your data to local volume, then your data will not be saved. So if I connect it again, so if I refresh it, so I think I deleted and restarted it. Now if I refresh it, you can see the database is gone and data is gone. Okay, because I did not mount it. So if I am mounted, so this is how you mount it. You can see I am attaching the volume and mounting it. I'll remove this. We'll use this one. So this is how you mount the volume. So that means in my local folder, whatever the data is stored in the container, I'm storing it in my local. So that if I delete my Docker container also, my data will be saved here in local. So I'll run this. We'll see that quickly. So I started it. Okay, it says that MySQL is already running, so I have to delete it first. And then start it again. So I'll start it again. Okay, so now you have started and mounted also. So now if I refresh it, I will first check the log. So it's still starting. So let us go and see where it is getting saved. So in my local, so you can see this MySQL folder got created, and this is where the data is getting saved. So if I delete the container also, as I'm mounting it local, the data will be safe. Okay, so now I can be able to connect it. I'll create database, MO1, and then I'll select the database and then create tables, insert data. We will check quickly if the table has data. So we checked it, table has data. Now I'll do it again. I'm going to delete the container and I'm going to, so you can see I'm stopping it and deleting the container. So I've deleted. So if you see, even though I deleted the container, the actual data is stored locally here. So if I start using the command, this command, the data will be retrieved quickly. So your container will have the data already. Okay, so let us check it quickly. Once the server is up, we'll check it. So at present, what we are trying to do is we are understanding what is Docker, and we are understanding. So we are understanding how Docker works here. So I have few questions here in the chat. In real time, any organization will create a permission IAM. Is DE responsible to give permission? No, normally you will have DevOps who will be managing the IAM. But we need to know. So for doing some automations, for sometimes you need to know for doing automations how IAM works, what is the role, what is users, what is permissions, everything you need to know the idea. So when you're doing automation, it's easier to work for you. So even though you are not going to do it, but you need to know for automation purpose. And other question is, it's a one-time mount. Yeah, so the mounting is one time. So that means if you mount the volume, it is attached. So next time it's going to automatically load the data from that mounted volume path. You can see now tables, employee. So I'll refresh it once and I will check it. So I'll refresh it and I'll access the employee so I can see the data. So even though I deleted the container, restarted, my data is safe because we have mounted it. Okay, so now we have understand what is Docker and how to start a Docker. So we were able to quickly start MySQL without doing much configuration, right? Running a one line of command, we were able to start quickly Docker, use MySQL here. Like that, you can start SQL Server, multiple database. Okay, using Docker, you can easily understand multiple Docker containers. That question, it is very high level. Do we need to go through services? Even Docker was very high level. So we don't need to get deeper into Docker. We are trying to set up local environment. For that, we are seeing Docker. Otherwise, you don't have to get deeper into Docker. You need to have basic knowledge on Docker. Okay, for development purpose, we use Docker. For real time, you are not going to use for production environment, and we are not going to use Docker. Only DevOps is going to use Docker. Production, we are not going to use Docker. So now let us go and then set up our local Docker environment for Glue. Okay, for that, first step is you have to configure your AWS profile. Okay, so before we configure our AWS CLI with default code. Now what I'm doing is I'm giving a profile name. So if you have multiple AWS account, so say that you have dev, you have stage, you have QA, like that you have multiple AWS account. You can configure that using profile. So you can create it, you can give the access data and configure each one and use AWS CLI for multiple things here. Okay, so I'm going to first configure the dev. So it's asking for, I'll give the same access key. Either you can have multiple users and configure multiple user, or it can be a different account also. So you can use different account or different user also. But for now, I'm using the same access key and then same secret for the profile creations. Okay, so we created the profile. So we have created the profile. First step one is done. I'll delete all this thing. So next step is we have to pull the Docker image. So this will take, if you pull it, it will run for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I don't want to do this because I already have pulled it and I have the images. So if you go and then see it here, images, you can see the images already. So I have pulled already the images. This is the image which we have. So in your local machine, you have to do this step, which will download the glue image, which will take like 10 minutes. Okay, so I will just do build. So why we are doing build? Because the pre-built glue Docker image does not have iceberg. Okay, so in this course, we are building Lakehouse architecture. So we need iceberg libraries. So we have a Docker file. In the Docker file, we are adding the iceberg library to the Docker image. And we are creating our own image. Okay, we are creating our own image specifically for iceberg here. Because the pre-built glue doesn't have iceberg. It doesn't have iceberg. So we are building using the Docker file. We are adding the library and we are building our image. Okay, so we are creating a new name here. So we are saying that glue iceberg 4.0. So if you see in the step 3, we have built the image. So you can see the image is built. And in step 4, we are running the image. Okay, so we are running the image and then I'm giving some configurations here. So what are the configuration I'm giving? So you can see I'm giving AWS profile. I'm giving my local volume where I have to mount the notebooks because I'm running Jupyter notebooks. So my local notebooks has to be mounted locally. Otherwise, what will happen if you delete the Docker or if you stop the Docker, your data will be lost. So I don't want that to happen. So I'm mounting all my notebooks to the local environment. I'll change this. I'll change it to evening batch. So I'll copy the path and I'll change the evening batch. So this is where our data is going to save. And here you can see I'm using profile dev1, which is the profile we created for our AWS account. So this Docker container, your AWS account is configured. So you don't have to manually do anything. It can access your S3. It can push your data to S3. It can access Glue. It can access RDS. It can access DynamoDB. So this Docker can do all the AWS CLI actions here. Okay, now I'll start this. So once it is started, you can access using the URL, you can access the Jupyter Lab. So you can see, you can access the Jupyter Lab. And here we have day2 folder. So you can create folders here. You can create folders, you can create notebooks. So we have already a folder. I'll delete this one. So here we already have some data. You can see some CSV files there, JSON files are there, Parquet files are there. So we already have placed some data here and we have a notebook. You can see we have a notebook. So what I will do, I'll create a new notebook. I'm going to create a new notebook. I'll say Python kernel. So this is a Python notebook. Here I can write commands. So I can write shell commands. That means Linux command. So I'm giving sh and I'm doing pwd. Okay, so you can see ls, all the Linux command works here. Also, I can do AWS command. So AWS S3 ls. So AWS CLI command. Okay, so I'm able to access. So that means my notebook has configured with my AWS account. So if I give command here, AWS commands here, so I can access my notebooks here. So there's one question here. Is there any best practices for directory structure to follow throughout the course? Yeah, I'll tell you. So we have some practice here. That means daily I'll be giving day 2, day 3, day 4 like that. So I'll show the previous one. So if you see the previous batch, so in notebooks, Jupyter Workspace, I'll be giving daily when I teach, I'll give the folders. So you can just copy this folder, and if you set your local environment, you can access this notebook, work on the directly on the folders. Okay, so that you can, whatever I'm teaching it, you can straight away run and then see it on your local. So that is why I create the folders, and you have to have the local setup on your machine so that you can run the code and see it and understand it. So on even the projects, you can run it and see it on local. Next question is, we use through CLI all services. We are going to use multiple things, right? So we are going to use, let us go to the, so we are going to use AWS console for accessing AWS services. We are going to learn AWS console. We are going to use AWS CLI. We are going to use AWS SDK also. So we are going to use Boto 3 using Python. We are going to use AWS SDK. So this everything are meant for automation also. So that means I want to create a service through automation code. That means I write a Python code and create RDS, create Glue, or create DynamoDB tables. Like that, I can create AWS services using code. That can be CLI, that can be Python Boto 3 codes. So we are going to use Boto 3 for creation of service. So why we do it? Because we have multiple environments. So in our real world use case, we have multiple environments. So I cannot go and manually create it on console, right? So if I have to create buckets, if I have to create RDS, if I have to create Glue, and in Glue I have 4 ETLs, I have multiple ETL code to be managed. So I cannot do it everything manually from Glue console, right, on the UI. So I have to convert that into your code and deploy it on multiple environments. And few environments I don't have access. For example, stage and prod, I don't have access. So I'll deploy the code and ask my DevOps to deploy it. Okay, so that is the reason why we are using Boto 3 and automating these services here. Okay, so far what we did, we have set our CLI, we have set up our Docker so that you can run our Jupyter notebook. So from the Jupyter notebook, we can access Glue, we can access RDS. So we can, this is our development environment. Okay, we are going to develop here. Once the development is done, we will deploy directly on the cloud. That means once we develop our code, we can take this code and deploy it on Glue, deploy it on deploy it on multiple environments. So that is the purpose we are doing it. Development on local environment. Okay, fine. So we tested first the S3 here. Now what I will do, I will go into my, I'm going to push data into a bucket. So we will create a bucket and then we will load data into our bucket. Okay, so why we are loading data into bucket? Can I do it manually? So if you have simple files, or if you have option, that means from console also, you can do it. For example, I'll go to AWS S3. So here I can create bucket manually. I can create bucket manually, and I can, after creating the bucket, I can go and then upload folder. So for example, I want to upload some folder from my local. So I can do it from my local environment, from Windows. I can do this. I can do it from UI. So you can do it from UI also. You can do it from command line. So UI is very easy to do, but once you configure CLI, why we are doing it? This first thing is we are verifying whether our Docker container, the Glue container, is able to access our bucket. It's able to write data and read data. So if you're able to do it, when you do it with ETL, when you do it with Spark, the same thing will work. So you don't have to do anything. It will help you. The AWS CLI is going to help you to do read and write operations. So let me go and then we'll create first bucket. So this is the command for creating a bucket. So AWS S3 MB. So this command for creating buckets, everything, if you want to refer the commands, you can use ChatGPT. So you can see here. So if you don't get options here, you can get the options from ChatGPT. Okay, so I'll go here. I'll create a bucket name. So already we have some buckets. So I'll name it May. So this bucket is already there. So I'll say that training to bucket. So we created a bucket. I'll refresh it. So you can see this is the new bucket which we created. Okay, so from using AWS CLI, we were able to create buckets. Now we want to push data. So that means I want to push data into this bucket. So what I will do, I'll run the comments. So if I want to push only single file, I can use this command. So data, file name, and this is the source, and this is the target. So we are using copy command for doing that. I'll run it. So why it throw error? Because it should be a shell command here. So if I don't give shell, it will consider as a Python code here because we are running in the Python kernel. So if I don't use the percentage as such, it will be considered as a Python command. Okay, so we have uploaded. Now let me go and check. So data folder got created and we have the file. So we are able to move file. Now let me move the entire folder in recursive fashion. So we are copying the entire folder. So we upload it. So let us go and verify. So we got all the files, right? JSON files, Parquet files, so multiple files, and it is a faster way of copying. Okay, so your CLI helps you to copy a bigger file in a faster way. Okay, so we copied it. Now let us do another operation, which is removing the data. Let us delete the data also. So to delete it single file and to do delete operation in recursive mode. So I'm changing only the bucket name here. So if I want to delete all the files, I can use this. If I want to delete single file, and I can give the file name. This is to remove the single file, and this is to let us first check if a single file is removed. So you can see single file is removed. If you want to remove the entire folder, I can remove the entire folder. Okay, now you can see the bucket is empty. So we are able to upload data into the bucket and we were able to remove the data. So we have full access. Because we gave full access, we are able to create bucket, we are able to copy data, we are able to remove the data. Okay. So let us see if any question. So there is a question here, which is like, we have AWS Glue and Iceberg are different images in Docker. Why we are pulling it separately? So what we did is, if you see that step here, so we have pulled the Docker image of Glue because we want on top of Glue, we want Iceberg. Okay, so Iceberg is not a separate container. On top of Glue container, we want to install the libraries of Iceberg. Okay, so Iceberg is not a separate Docker container here. On top of glue, we are installing some library and making the iceberg container. So we pull the glue, and on top of glue, we installed the libraries here. So you can see iceberg library. So we pull the Docker image of glue, and then we are installing the libraries here. That is how we are building the glue iceberg Docker container, and we are running the glue iceberg container. So there is one more question. Are we actually allowed to access S3 bucket from local in production? So normally you will not have access if you are working for client, or if you are working for business, or if you are working with production environments, then you may have access. That too, you may have only read-only access. You may not have delete access. But stage, dev, lower environment, you may have access. Okay. So far what we did, we were able to start the Docker container, which is a glue and iceberg Docker container, and our AWS account is configured here. And then we were able to run commands to test if we are able to connect to AWS services, and then do read-write operations. Okay, so let me change this. I'll rename this to demo one. Okay, so whatever I did, the notebook, if I stop this Docker container, the data we have mounted already to local. So I created a new notebook, right? So it should be there in our local. So if you see inside day two, we have the demo because we have mounted the Docker container in the local environment. So whatever the notebooks we are creating, it will be saved in local. So next time, if I'm going to start it, I can run this command. So my old data will be returned. So even though I stop the mission, if I restart the mission, my data will not be deleted. My data will be so locally saved because we have mounted this one. So that is the purpose I showed how to mount MySQL. We saw how Docker works, everything little bit on that. Okay, so you can see now same demo, right? I stopped and restarted again. Still my whatever the changes I did are there in my node. Okay, this is going to be our development environment where we are going to develop our code. So here I can write Python, I can write Spark, everything here. And why we use this environment? Can I do it directly on Visual Studio Code? So why we are using Docker here? Because we are using Spark, we are using Glue, that if you're going to run it on Windows, you have to do a lot of configurations. You have to have a lot of configuration done on Windows machine. Instead of that, to simplify that, running in a Docker is a simple way. Okay, that is the reason why we have used Docker, and we have installed the container and we are running Spark. Mainly for writing Spark code, we are going to Jupyter Notebook. If you are going to write Python code, you don't need Docker itself. So when you are going to learn Lambda or step functions, so we are going to directly do it on Visual Studio Code. We are not going to use Jupyter Notebook. Only for Spark and Glue, ETL, we are performing the Docker containers here. Okay, so far what we did, we have created a user and we have created a CLI account, and from the CLI, we were able to access our AWS resource. That resource we have used S3 so far. We are able to create S3 buckets. We are able to put data, get data. So as I had permission for that user, I had permission to S3. So I was able to perform S3 operations here. Okay, so if that user has RDS, I can do RDS operation. If the user has Lambda, I can do Lambda operations here. Okay, based on the permission from the CLI account, I can perform that operations. Okay, so we are going to write, we did a basic connection test using CLI. In future, we are not going to use CLI. We are going to write Boto3 commands. We are going to write Boto3, or we are going to write Spark. That is what we are going to write. But to set up the environment, to test the environment, we use CLI. Okay, fine. So any questions so far on setting up the environment, running your containers? Any question on that? So I'll be sharing PDF which I shared already for the morning batch. You can see that has the environment setup. That means you have to download, you have to configure your credentials, AWS credentials, create users, give access, pull Docker container, and then set up your Jupyter notebook and test your Jupyter notebook if it is able to connect with S3. Okay, so once you have done this one, in the next week, so we are going to write Spark. Here we are going to write Spark. So I'll show it. For example, I will take old code. So for example, I'll go to previous batch. I'll take, for example, a daily. Once your environment is done, daily we are going to work on folders like day 3, day 4. So I'll be sharing only this zip file. I'll be sharing like day 3, day 5, day 6 or something like a zip file. So you can just copy it and then place it on your local environment where on the inside the workspace, you can paste it here. So if you paste it, then you can access the notebook. So if you refresh it, you can access the notebook. So you can run your code, right? That code can be Spark, it can be Glue. So here we are accessing MySQL and doing some operations here. So we are doing some operations. Or we are accessing Iceberg. So if you see here, we are running Iceberg operations. So where we are accessing Iceberg and performing create tables, load data. So whatever we discuss in the class, you can run it and test it on your local environment. If you have this local setup, it will be easier for you to run and test it. Okay, so that is the purpose of setting up the local environment. So it will be easier for you to daily take the zip file, deploy it, and test the thing which we learn it. Okay, I see one question here, which is like, can you give more insight on Glue and Iceberg here? So, I think we have discussed on initially. So, we are going to use Spark for our ETL operations. Okay, so why Spark? Because when you are creating data pipelines, when you want to do distributed computing and process large volume of data, so for processing large volume of data, you need more machines. Okay, so in enterprise, the data are going to be huge. So when you are going to handle large amount of data, you cannot do it in one machine. You need multiple machines. So Spark helps you to run your code on multiple machines. So Spark is a distributed computing framework where you can write Python or SQL. You can write the code in Python and SQL and build a ETL pipeline where you can do transformations, you can do cleaning, you can do all the data engineering work on the Spark framework here. And Glue is a cluster framework, okay, because Glue helps you to build that multiple machines. So you write the Spark code. So if you see here, we are writing Spark code here. This code, I can copy it and then place it in my Glue environment. So here in the Glue, I can paste the code and run it on multiple machines. So here you can see worker type. I have VMs here. So I can choose which type of machine I want. So it's like a 4 CPU machine, 16 GB RAM machine, or powerful machine like a 8 CPU, 32 GB RAM, or even more powerful machines. So I can choose a bigger machine and I can say I want 10 machine or I want 100 machine. So your code will be running on 100 machines here. So you can scale up your environment and you can run the code in a distributed fashion. So you can process any volume of data. Okay. So this helps in organization to process large volume of data. That is why you're going for Glue. And why Iceberg here? Because we are using data lake. The problem in data lake, right? Data lake doesn't have quality of data because data lake doesn't have update operation. You cannot do updates. You cannot do deletes. So I'm storing some table data. I'm storing some structured data. In that structured data, where I think that I have 100 millions of records. In that, if I want to delete only 2 records, or if I want to update only few records, I have to overwrite the entire data in data lake because data lake doesn't have updates or delete. So to solve that problem, we are implementing Iceberg here. So in Iceberg, you have updates, deletes. So where you can delete the data or we can update the data separately. Okay, so other than that, it has a lot of features. It can maintain versions in data lake. you can do a lot of data warehouse functionality. You can bring data warehouse functionality to data lake. So that is the purpose of using Iceberg. So using Iceberg, we are going to build a lakehouse architecture. So we are on the data lake, we are going to build the warehouse functionality, data warehouse functionality, so that you can use both. You can use it as a data warehouse, you can use it as a data lake. Okay, that is the purpose of using Iceberg. Okay, fine. Next thing is, so I see few questions. So if you have questions, you can ask me now. I'll unmute everyone. So if you have questions, you can ask me. So I have some questions here. Iceberg is in some service which has some logic operation method. So Iceberg is implemented on top of data lake. Okay, so on top of S3, so I'll show some Iceberg data. So you can see, I'll go to some. So here, this is S3. In S3, we have written some data. This is not Iceberg table. I'll go to Iceberg. So you can see this is the Iceberg table. So on S3, we are going to have the data. The data will be in Parquet format. Along with the data, you will have metadata. Okay, so the metadata is a JSON or Avra files. Okay, so in the Iceberg is nothing but on S3 on data lake, you are building a metadata layer. Okay, so and you are managing all the insert, update transactions happening in the data lake. So when you are doing operations, read operations, from the metadata, you are taking the latest version and then you are retrieving it. That is how Iceberg works. So it is like it maintains all the metadata in the data layer itself. Along with the data, it has metadata. So when is our next class? So next class will be on Thursday. So like tomorrow, you can try to set up the environment. Try to see if your local environment is working. If you have any issues, you can let me know. So I'll help you to run the code so that you can do it tomorrow, and next class will be on Thursday. So because Wednesday we don't have classes, we will have class on Thursday. And the other question, like AWS Lambda is serverless, you can write code and logic. Yeah, so we are going to use different serverless functionalities, right? So Glue is serverless, Lambda is serverless, step function are serverless. That means only when you need it, the server will run, and the other time the server will not be running. So even though, if you see here, I have the code, only when I ran this code, I'll be built. So if I'm going to run with multiple missions, right? So if I'm going to run with 10 missions, I'll be built for 10 missions. Or I'm going to run for 100 missions, I'll be for that duration of runtime, I'll be charged. So if I'm running for 10 minutes, I'll be charged only for 10 minutes. So that is how your serverless is going to help you. Whereas if you take EMR, right? So EMR also, you can run Spark, you can write ETL operations on EMR. Where in EMR, you have dedicated servers. That means I create a server, that server will run throughout the day, throughout the month. So you will be billed for throughout the day, throughout the month. So Glue is serverless. It will be running only for the time you use. So you will be built only for the time. So other time you will not be built. Like that, Lambda is serverless. Only for the usage you will be built. And step function is serverless. So on Glue, you can implement a write to data lake. And while writing, I can use Iceberg. Okay, so writing to data lake, I can configure Iceberg and then use Iceberg so that I do updates. I do on top of data lake. I can perform all the operations like along with as I can use data lake, I can use warehouse operation also on the data. So it's a cheaper, right? So data warehouse is there where for some functionalities I cannot store the data in data warehouse because data warehouse is costly. So if you are storing all your data in data warehouse, it will be expensive for you to store because I want to store 10 years of data or 5 years of data for machine learning or AI operations. In that scenario, I cannot load all my data, the heavier operations, I cannot keep loading, storing into my data warehouse. Then my data warehouse will become expensive. That cost of data warehouse will be expensive. So in enterprise, we use lakehouse architecture. So the data which can be which can be used for warehouse functionality, and it is very huge, and it can be like sensitive, little bit sensitive. If it is sensitive, we store in data warehouse, and if it is not sensitive, which is used for engineering purposes or machine learning purpose, we store it in data warehouse lakehouse architecture. Okay, so in organization we use everything. We use data lake, we use lakehouse architecture, we use data warehouse. So we are going to see all this thing. We are going to see data lake, we are going to see lakehouse architecture, we are going to see data warehouse also. Okay, fine. So any questions from anyone so far on this setup? Okay, so quickly I'll go and then I'll show. So let us see quickly what are the users of data lake, and then what are the companies which use top companies which use data lake and specifically S3, right? And then we will compare Indian companies which use S3 and then AWS. So we will see quickly. So this is more of statistics, right? So if you see data lake use cases, what are the use cases we use data lake for centralizing the data? That means I want to bring the data, centralize it, we use data lake. Or I wanted to perform ETL, I want to do as a staging layer, I want to use the data, store it in the staging layer, and then bring it to data warehouse. So for staging layer, you use data lake. For doing ETL operations, I want to have raw data, process data, and then gold data, like a different kind of medallion architecture. We use data lake, and building a like an lakehouse architecture, implementing ACID transactions, time travel, versioning, updates, deletes on my data lake. To implement a lakehouse architecture, we use data lake. So your iceberg, delta tables, or OT, you implement on the data lake. Okay, and for machine learning, we use data lake to store historical data, to store unstructured data, to store media files, audio files. So in organizations like social media companies or media entertainment company, they store audio files, video files, large number of video files on S3. Okay, so and other things are analytics we use for analytical purpose. We store the data for archive, for backup, for sharing the data within the team, for event-driven purpose, for log information. We store it in data lake. So these are the common use case. And if you see the top companies which use S3 and then which they use for different purpose. So Netflix, they store video content, metadata, petabytes of video content in S3. They store all their audio content deliveries for analytics, and then the video content, audio content is stored in S3. And the Notion, right? So you can see I'm using Notion. Notion stores all their data in S3. Okay, so like that, like lot of company, they use data lake for different purposes. It's not only for analytics, right? For unstructured data, for logs, for different purpose, right? They use data lake. So Airbnb store the data that is user profile photos, their analytics, they store it in S3. And Comcast, it's a telecom company where they store the customer behavior, their service level data for millions of users, they store it in S3. And Siemens here, which is a manufacturing company where IoT sensor data is stored in S3. Like that, you can see a lot of use cases, right? Different sectors, different company like travel, media, a lot of sectors here. And banking, if you see banking specific, for fraudulent activity, for machine learning, we store all the data in S3. So you can see Capital One, they use S3 for storing the data. And then Goldman Sachs, Nasdaq, like lot of example on the banking. So if you see all this big companies, they use S3 for different purposes. And again, tech startups like Airbnb, Notion, Figma, so they use S3 data lake for storing different kind of things. Some company use for storing unstructured data. Some company use for storing log files. Some store analytical information. Some store as a backup, right? They take backup of the data and store it in S3. Or they build a event-driven pipeline. They build a machine learning architecture on data lake. So they use for various purposes. Okay, and Indian companies, if you see Indian startups, right? Specifically Indian startups like Ola uses for storing their GPS data, trip matrices for their IoT data, everything they store it in S3. And Swiggy uses for customer interactions, for status, they store it in S3. And Zarada used for the trade archives, documents, their KFC documents, the application data are stored in S3 on the data lake. And like that, you can see a lot of companies here, Baiju, Upstack, like that, different company. It can be from startups or it can be enterprise company, right? From manufacturing or banking. They use data lake and they use different AWS stack. Okay, this is more to understand. So what are the companies, which sector, for what purpose they use data lake? That is what we are seeing it here. So it gives you high level for understanding about usage of S3 in different companies. So again, questions. So if you have doubts, you can reach me morning time. That means after 10:30, I'll be available till 12. And then I'll be available in afternoon, like 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 sometimes. And then after that, I will not be available. So only like morning and afternoon, I'll be available. So you can message me if you have. So normally, I'll reply immediately to WhatsApp. If there is a simple issue, I'll reply it immediately on WhatsApp. So you can resolve it immediately. You don't have to wait for next day. You can just put the screenshot of your error message. So I'll try to help it immediately. Or if you want to have a call, you can connect with me after 10:30 or 11. Okay, while setting up environment if you have any issues. Okay, fine. So we will stop it for today. If you have any questions, we'll discuss or we'll stop it for today. So any questions from anyone? Okay, fine. If you don't have any questions, we'll stop it for today. Then we'll connect again on Thursday. Thanks, everyone.